A young man in a dark cloak confronts a monstrous, shadowy entity. He raises a hand, gathering a sphere of light, and declares that after all the chaos caused, the creature will not escape unpunished as a powerful blast of energy erupts from him. This young man, Vim Ael, had been chosen as a court magician, praised for his merits in helping to solve the Empire's crisis. The dark entity disintegrates before his power. He was a hero, standing alongside other champions of the realm. This all took place in the Cyrus Empire. But now, in a Stark chamber, Vim Ael stands before an Imperial official. He is accused of the crime of defying the Emperor. The official pronounces his sentence. He will be imprisoned, his qualification as a court magician permanently revoked, and he will be stripped of all his power. Vim's hands are bound in heavy manacles. From his throne, the new Emperor observes. He notes that it was the previous Emperor who appointed Vim, a commoner with the power to shake the entire country. The realization hits him with the force of a physical blow. He can only stammer in disbelief. No way. Following the sentencing, a covered wagon rumbles along a path through a dense forest. The wagon stops before a massive, sealed gate. A guard informs Vim that his magic has been sealed and any resistance is futile. Vim is then shoved out of the wagon, falling to the ground as he protests that this is ridiculous. He wondered if this was how it all ended. After working so hard, after dedicating his life to changing this unreasonable world, was he to perish in a place like this? His mind drifted back more than 10 years, to his childhood with his friend, Anna. He was always getting injured, and she would promise to come and heal him. He praised her, calling her awesome, and she beamed with pride, declaring herself a magician of justice. That was before she turned 9. The memory soured as he recalled the truth. Anna was killed, murdered by a human trafficking organization. At that moment, watching her die, a young Vim wept and swore an oath. He would change this world, turn it into a place without sadness, where no one gets hurt. He would become a magician of justice. The memory of that oath fueled his resolve in the present. He tried a massive door before him, but it wouldn't open. Looking down at the magic ceiling handcuffs, he clenched his fists, declaring that he could not die, not tied up in a place like this. He knew these were the real deal. His magic was completely sealed. It was a risky gambit, but he saw only one option left to him. He decided to let the mana in his body run wild. A torrent of uncontrolled energy erupted from him, swirling violently on the ground. His goal was to forcibly break free. The chain connecting the manacles strained against the overwhelming power. With eyes closed in concentration, he pushed his internal energy to its absolute limit. Cracks spiderwebbed across the metal before the manacles shattered completely. He looked at his freed hands, a small smile forming. The gamble had worked. Now free, he turned his attention back to the massive gate. His first obstacle was overcome, but a new question arose. How is he to leave this place? He unleashes a fireball spell against the massive gate, but it collides with an invisible, hexagonal barrier and dissipates without effect. He realizes this must be some form of ancient, lost barrier magic, far stronger than a simple seal. As he considers the barrier's impossible strength, a disembodied voice echoes in his mind, asking a single question. Do you desire power? A flicker of hope appears on his face. Perhaps it is possible to break through after all. The voice repeats its question, and he looks down the long, tiled corridor before him, his expression hardening with confusion and suspicion. What the? He wonders, staring into the darkness from which the voice seems to emanate. He identifies the sound as a voice echoing from the deepest part of this place. He ponders the offer, questioning what this power truly entails. He weighs his options. If he had such power, could he escape? He initially dismisses the thought as wishful thinking, but then acknowledges his grim reality. With no other choice, he resolves to move forward. Stepping into the corridor, he is immediately struck by the oppressive atmosphere. The mana concentration is incredibly thick, potent enough to cause someone unaccustomed to it to faint. He grits his teeth in frustration. The dense mana reminds him of what he knows about dungeons. Mana, the energy produced by all things in nature, can form a core in large quantities, giving birth to a magic beast. Places with such thick mana attract powerful monsters, becoming high-ranked dungeons that are impossible to clear without a proper party. He wonders grimly if this place is an S-ranked dungeon. Despite knowing the danger, he steels himself. Doubting whether he can survive alone, he decides there is no other way and continues his advance into the darkness. To light his way, he conjures a small orb of light. Its glow immediately reveals several small, lizard-like shadow beasts that lunge at him from the darkness. He drops to the ground, narrowly evading their coordinated assault. Having dodged the attack, his gaze falls upon something unexpected just ahead, a stone staircase leading upwards. A flicker of surprise crosses his face as he realizes what this might be. He reached the top of the stairs, emerging into a vast, empty chamber paved with stone tiles. He took in the sight, wondering if this was the deepest part of the dungeon. His thoughts immediately turned to the final challenge that must await him. He questioned aloud whether a dungeon boss was present. The question was answered almost instantly as a tremendous presence erupted into the chamber, startling him. A massive, dark tail slammed into the stone floor just ahead of him. He looked up, his suspicion confirmed. There was a boss. The creature revealed itself fully, a massive black dragon, letting out a deafening roar that shook the very foundations of the room. Despite the overwhelming sight, A confident smirk spread across his face. He recalled hearing that it would be impossible to take down this particular dungeon boss without a party of multiple high-rank adventurers. Undeterred by the odds, he charged forward with a battle cry. The dragon responded in kind, opening its maw to unleash an attack. As the beast lunged, he calmly prepared his defense, a magic circle materializing before him. He cast a physical barrier, challenging the creature to try and break through. The dragon's attack slammed into the magical shield with immense force. The barrier held firm, but he grunted, feeling the strain of blocking such a powerful blow. The beast recoiled slightly, its initial assault completely nullified by the shimmering, unbreakable wall of magic. The beast let out a furious roar, its attack having met only empty air. From behind it, Vim Ael's voice called out, drawing its attention. He had used the moment to finish his incantation. With a confident smile, he announced the completion of his ancient barrier. With his defense established, he declared it was his turn to attack. Praying to the spirit of light, he unleashed a holy lance. The brilliant spear of energy shot forth, striking the dragon head-on and engulfing it in a blinding explosion, certain the battle was settled. The powerful spell tore through the beast, its body disintegrating into dust and shadow. The dungeon boss had been defeated with unexpected ease. Catching his breath, he reflected on the close call. It had been a dangerous gambit. He was relieved he had managed to cast a quick, no-casting-time physical barrier just before the ancient barrier was complete. He shuddered at the thought. If he had been even a moment late, the fight would have been far more difficult. Looking around the now-empty chamber, he wondered aloud if the way forward was finally clear. In response, a disembodied voice echoed through the chamber, posing a question. Do you desire power? Startled, Vim looked around, questioning the source of this recurring voice. He stood in silence, alone amidst the grand, empty arches of the final chamber, listening intently. His confusion gave way to fierce determination. He answered the unseen presence, declaring that he had come all this way precisely to obtain that power and demanded it be given to him. The voice seemed pleased with his response. Well said, it echoed through the hall. To you I will bestow immortality. He watched as a glowing, circular crest materialized before him, confirming the acquisition of a new skill, immortality. The power settled into his being with a palpable finality. But instead of triumph, a wave of panic washed over him. He found himself in a vast, empty hall, the exit sealed. He screamed to be let out, shouting that this wasn't the kind of power he wanted. A dreadful realization dawned on him as he stared at the symbol now bound to him. It couldn't be. There exists a special skill known as immortality. It cannot be removed. It guarantees an eternal existence by ceasing the aging process and instantly healing even fatal injuries. Within a stark, tiled prison, Vim Ael stood alone, leaning on a simple staff. His expression hardened as he reflected on his fate. Such a cursed power was now in his hands, and the one-year mark of his confinement was fast approaching. He desperately searched for an exit, but found none. To survive, he hunted the magical beasts that roamed his prison, finding them too weak to pose a challenge. Though their taste was horrid, hunger compelled him to eat. The endless cycle was maddening. Lying on the cold floor, he found himself unable to sleep, firm in his resolve not to spend an eternity in this place. After searching fruitlessly for an exit once more, he lashed out, his fist striking the wall. He stood back, looking at the insignificant damage. After all this time, all his efforts, this was the result. His attention then shifted to the large, sealed doors. He realized he was left with no other option but to confront this place. He surveyed the area, noting the shattered handcuffs on the floor and the lack of any guards. It seemed his captors were confident in their prison. The magical barrier sealing the exit was, indeed, still standing strong. A wave of desperation washed over him. He unleashed a powerful blast of energy at the barrier, screaming in anguish, demanding to know what he had done to deserve such a fate. As the energy dissipated, his eyes widened in disbelief. There on the surface of the impenetrable barrier was a crack. He stared at the fractured surface, a realization dawning. The barrier had grown weak in this spot, deteriorated by a year of magical beasts roaming the dungeon. Now he could finally act. With newfound resolve, he stepped back and began his incantation. Praying to the spirit of fire, he channeled his magic into a glowing sigil on the floor, commanding it to burn. The spell struck true, shattering the weakened barrier into countless fragments. A triumphant smile spread across his face as he realized he was finally free. He pushed open the heavy doors of his prison, which groaned in protest, revealing the outside world for the first time in a year. Stepping into the light, he shielded his eyes, momentarily taken aback by the sun's brilliance. He quickly shook off the sentiment, reminding himself that he needed to get away before anyone noticed his escape. Now free, he paused to consider his next move. His first thought was to head toward the kingdom of Leora. He had heard that Leora was a meritocracy, a system based on ability. There was certainly no reason to return to the Cyrus Empire, the very nation that had imprisoned him. A memory surfaced, the smiling face of a young girl, Anna, who had once declared her dream of becoming a magician of justice. The memory seemed to solidify his resolve. Clenching his fist, he decided on his method of travel, flight magic. He cast the spell and launched himself into the sky, leaving the forest and his prison far behind. With a final glance back, he offered a bitter farewell to the Cyrus Empire, his gratitude laced with a deep-seated curse. He soared through the sky, magical sigils glowing on his wrists as he propelled himself forward at great speed. His flight came to an abrupt halt as something below caught his attention. He looked down to see a royal carriage besieged on the road. Guards in full-plate armor were struggling against an unseen enemy, arrows littering the ground around them. He immediately recognized it as trouble. Inside the carriage, a young princess watched the chaos unfold, her face pale with fear. A single, desperate thought crossed her mind. Was she going to die here? As the carriage shook violently from an impact, she let out a terrified scream. Beside her, an elderly attendant urged the princess to be careful, his own face etched with worry. Seeing the imminent danger, Vim Ael dove from the sky, his cloak billowing behind him. He shouted down to the besieged party, promising his help. As the royal carriage comes under attack, a guard orders the deployment of a defensive measure. A shimmering, hexagonal energy field, a severance barrier, materializes around them, shielding the vehicle and its protectors. The barrier holds firm as arrows thud harmlessly against its surface. A guard, sword drawn, wonders aloud where the attackers came from. Vim Ael, crouching low, identifies the threat, stating that the enemy is using locating magic. He rises with resolve, declaring that the battle will be decided in a single move. Conjuring 2 glowing magical circles, he calmly assesses the situation, identifying a total of 6 bandits. He presses his hand against the barrier's inner wall, focusing his intent. His spell is precise. Place a magic circle directly above each enemy's head. A moment later, he confirms his targets are fully locked on. In the surrounding forest, the hidden archers prepare their next volley, one invoking the spirit of light for power. Suddenly, the magic circles appear above them, and a blinding flash of energy erupts, instantly stunning the entire group. He turns to the guard, assuring him that it's over and that he's made them all pass out. The spell's effect is potent. The bandits are stunned, with a recovery time of 24 hours. As the guard expresses his awe, Vim notices an arrow lodged in the man's shoulder and promises to fix him up immediately. Placing his hand over the wound, Vim closes his eyes and channels his energy, casting a healing spell. The light fades, leaving the guard's shoulder completely healed. Stunned by this display, the guard demands to know who Vim is, shocked that he can even use recovery magic. Before he can answer, the carriage door opens. A young woman with long blonde hair steps out, gently chiding the guard for his impoliteness and suggesting they should express their gratitude first. The guard apologizes profusely. Meanwhile, Vim considers his own precarious situation, realizing he's essentially a fugitive. She curtsies gracefully, introducing herself as Ellen Leora, the first princess of the Kingdom of Leora, and offers her sincere thanks. A butler named Jeffrey echoes her gratitude. Vim is struck with a sudden, shocking realization. The passenger in the carriage was the very princess he was on his way to meet. He awkwardly introduces himself as Vim Ael, a mere magician just passing by, attempting to brush off any talk of rewards. The princess, however, is not so easily dissuaded. She asks for his name directly and insists that he allow her country to offer him a reward for his service. Her insistence is firm. She takes his hand, her grip surprisingly strong, explaining that failing to express her gratitude would be a disgrace to her country. With a heartfelt look, she asks if he won't accompany them to Leora. He is taken aback by the direct invitation. Flustered, he admits that he was already heading to Leora, and since the princess herself suggested it, he feels he has little choice but to agree. Delighted by his acceptance, she eagerly pulls him toward the carriage, announcing that they will depart immediately. She adds with excitement that she wants to introduce him to her father, a statement that catches Vim by surprise. The mention of her father triggers a sudden, startling thought in his mind: the king. Their journey takes them toward the grand kingdom of Leora, its majestic castle perched atop a hill overlooking the city. From within the carriage, the princess cheerfully announces their arrival in the royal capital, gesturing out the window for Vim to see. He observes the bustling streets, remarking on what a fine country it is. His words bring a smile to Princess Ellen's face, and she tells him that hearing him say so means a great deal. She then suggests they continue their conversation once they arrive at the royal palace. Upon entering the palace, he is immediately struck by its grandeur, marveling that the hall is several times larger than those in the empire. The princess, noticing his stunned silence, turns to him with a questioning look, asking what the matter is. Her question hangs in the air as she suddenly recalls something she forgot to ask him. Vim, however, is lost in his own thoughts, admitting to himself that the prospect of meeting the king is making him nervous. He stammers, caught off guard as Princess Ellen asks him for the reason he was heading to Leora in the first place. She continues, explaining that since the change of emperor in Cyrus, she has only heard bad rumors and finds it hard to believe such a thing could happen. Vim asks if she believes what he said, and she confirms without hesitation that she does. With a reassuring smile, she tells him that this is Leora, and no one here would put him through such an absurd ordeal. She then extends her hand, formally welcoming Vim Ael. As she welcomes him, she gestures grandly towards their surroundings, proudly declaring the kingdom of Leora to be a country with a complete meritocracy. He watches her, a faint, thoughtful smile touching his lips. He accepts her hand, shaking it firmly. Ellen thanks him, pleased that he is back. Their formal greeting is concluded as they come before Ellen's father, the king. He thanks Vim Ael for saving his daughter and states that a reward must be prepared. He then asks Vim directly what he desires: a noble title, a house, money, or qualifications. As Ellen calls out to her father, Vim panics internally, wondering what he should do. Inside a lavishly decorated room, the king of Leora sits across from Vim Ael and his daughter, Princess Ellen. With a slight bow of his head, the king once again expresses his profound gratitude for the rescue of his daughter. He responds with a flustered wave of his hand, insisting it was nothing and simply the right thing to do. Princess Ellen, smiling warmly, tells the young man there is no need to be so humble. Realizing his own oversight, the king apologizes for his rudeness in not having introduced himself properly. He then formally declares himself Elderet Leora, the king of the country. His daughter turns to him excitedly, clasping her hands together as she exclaims that Mr. Vim is truly amazing. Vim, meanwhile, sweats nervously at the high praise. He tries to downplay her compliments, insisting he isn't that amazing, but she quickly cuts him off. With a determined look, she pleads with him not to belittle himself. She continues with sparkling eyes, recounting how he came gallantly from the sky and used various powerful spells, just like the legendary magician of justice, Arksambel. The name shocks Vim to his core. He demands to know how she knows of his master. The king, overhearing this, laughs heartily, remarking that it sounds like the return of the heretic sage. Vim's sudden outburst leaves both the king and the princess momentarily stunned and confused. The name Arksambel carries immense weight. He was a legendary magician who appeared when the kingdom of Leora was beset by numerous problems. This man, who honored social customs and used his powers to protect the people, solved all the kingdom's issues and is now praised by its citizens as the magician of justice. The king processes this revelation. He had only heard rumors that the savior had a disciple, but Vim saving Ellen seems to confirm it was fated. The princess is equally shocked, never expecting Mr. Vim to be the disciple of such a figure. Vim himself sits silently, caught in the middle of their astonishment. He inwardly lamented the attention, thinking of how he had heard his master had passed away and how he truly did not want to stand out. The king of Leora, however, expressed that he could not thank Vim and his master enough. With a grand gesture, he offered to grant Vim whatever he might desire as a reward. He waved his hand dismissively, insisting with a flustered smile that he was fine and hadn't done it for the sake of a reward. The king noted what a modest young man he was, remarking that he had taken a liking to him. The monarch's expression turned serious. He stated that, as a person from the royal family, he could not simply do nothing to repay the debt. He looked up thoughtfully as the king pressed the issue, asking him directly if there was anything he wanted. Vim considered this, initially thinking his desire might be a bit rude. But then, an idea struck him. He decided to make use of the favor, asking if he could get an adventurer's license. He explained his reasoning with a determined look. He is unable to use his identification from his home country of Cyrus. The king seemed taken aback by the simple request, questioning if that was all. He noted that a license issued by the country brings a level of societal trust, but it was a small thing to grant, especially if Vim was after peerage. Vim quickly clarified that he had no desire to become nobility. The monarch's surprise gave way to a broad, appreciative smile. He told Vim that he had chosen a challenging path, and that he liked him more by the minute. Agreeing to handle it at once, he explained it would take until morning and invited Vim to stay the night at the castle. Shortly after, a heavy door creaked open. He was led into a lavish guest room, his eyes widening in astonishment. As a castle maid bowed and announced her departure, he couldn't help but exclaim at how fancy the accommodations were. Alone now, he reflected on the whirlwind of recent events, his thoughts drifting to his master. Exhausted, he fell back onto the large bed, noting how soft and fluffy it was. The moment of rest sent his mind spiraling back into a painful memory. He saw himself as a boy, standing amidst gravestones in the pouring rain as a hooded figure approached. The figure had asked why he wore such a look in his eyes. The young Vim confessed his sorrow stemmed from his own weakness, from his failure to protect a dear friend. With burning intensity, he declared his desire to become strong enough to change the rotten world. The hooded man listened, then pointed out a hard truth. Merely begging for strength would accomplish nothing, a fact the boy surely already understood. The man then extended an offer. To the helpless boy who so desperately wanted power, he proposed a path: become his disciple. He would help him get stronger. The offer left the young Vim stunned into silence. A sharp knock echoes from a wooden door. Beyond, a sprawling city rests under the morning sun, a grand castle perched atop its highest hill. The door swings open, and Jeffrey, the butler, greets a still sleepy Vim Ael. Apologizing for the early intrusion, Jeffrey announces that Vim's adventurer certification has been prepared. He explains that while the issuance of certifications is usually entrusted to the guilds, this time His Majesty is awarding it in person. Vim smiles, accepting the exceptional treatment as a great honor, as Jeffrey offers to guide him to the throne room. As they walk, Vim questions why they are going to such lengths, feeling that the previous day's reception should have been sufficient. Jeffrey clarifies that it is because the situation is entirely unprecedented. They proceed down an ornate corridor, where castle maids stand at attention, bowing as the pair passes. Jeffrey then asks about Vim's familiarity with royal etiquette. With a confident touch to his chin, Vim assures him that he spent time in the Empire before and believes he will be fine. Understanding, Jeffrey gestures towards a grand set of doors. Well then, he says, you may enter. The maids pull the heavy doors open. The entrance reveals a vast and opulent throne room. A long carpet stretches towards the distant throne, and the hall is lined on both sides with the assembled nobles of the court, all eyes turning towards him. From his seat upon the throne, the king of Leora speaks, his voice carrying across the hall. Vim Ael, come fort. Among the onlookers, several familiar faces watch with keen interest. He obeys, walking the length of the hall and kneeling before the king. As he looks up from the floor, he can't help but think to himself how truly amazing the spectacle is. As he kneels, the king of Leora begins the ceremony, announcing that he will now personally conduct the awarding of the adventurer certification. The king specifies that this is for his distinguished act of rescuing Princess Ellen from bandits, then commands him to raise his head. He looks up to meet the king's gaze, who then makes a stunning declaration. He is hereby designated an S-rank adventurer. The pronouncement sends a ripple of shock through the court. The nobles murmur in disbelief, noting that S-rank is the highest possible rank, and that adventurers normally start at E-rank. They remark that there are no more than 5 such people in the entire country. Amidst the commotion, Vim is left utterly stunned and speechless. The king, however, seems to be enjoying the reaction, offering a subtle, playful wink. The gesture snaps him back to reality. He begins to protest, pleading for His Majesty Eldoret to hold on, but the king simply maintains a confident, knowing smirk. Ignoring the interruption, the king continues from his throne. He announces that as proof of his top rank, he will assign Vim a second name. He declares that this new name will be the Magician of the Abyss. Vim receives the title with a solemn expression. With the title bestowed, the king smiles, stating that he looks forward to seeing his performance. Overwhelmed but resolute, he bows his head slightly and humbly accepts the honor. Meanwhile, in the Cyrus Empire, an official delivers a grave report to the emperor. It seems as though Vim Ael has escaped from a dungeon. The emperor reacts in shock. The official explains that he received a report from the chief court magician confirming a barrier had been broken, and that Vim is now at large. He reminds the emperor that Vim was imprisoned out of fear that young magicians who admire him would start a rebellion. The emperor demands to know if Vim's location has been found, but the official replies that it has not. A high-ranking military commander steps forward, ordering an immediate investigation into Vim's whereabouts and his arrest, whether he is found dead or alive. Hearing this, the emperor, with a hand covering his mouth, grimly concludes that it has come to this and orders the death penalty to be executed. The commander turns and walks away down a long, arched corridor, a confident smirk on his face. He thinks to himself that Vim has finally started moving. He pauses, arms crossed, and considers Vim's likely destination. Given the dungeon's location, he deduces Vim is probably heading for the Leora kingdom. His thoughts drift to the past year, a time of repeated tax increases and severe class discrimination, and he reflects that he had maintained faith in Vim's eventual return. His internal monologue concludes with a powerful conviction. He is certain that if it is Vim, he can fix this rotten world. A document officially recognizes Vim Ael's new S-rank adventurer status. Outside a nearby servant agency, 2 women with cat ears discuss the news. One recounts how he saved the king's daughter, earning his new rank. The other remarks that he sounds like a good person, wistfully hoping he might be the one to purchase her. Elsewhere, in a darker setting, a young woman with short, light hair and a bruised shoulder is grabbed forcefully. She tells her captor to stop, questioning if they even know what kind of people buy slaves. Her visible eye narrows with contempt as she finishes her thought, declaring that they are all terrible. The scene shifts as a pair of large, ornate iron gates swing open with a heavy creak. Beyond them, Vim Ael stands before a magnificent, sprawling mansion, looking up in disbelief. He realizes with astonishment that this enormous estate is his new residence. He pushes open the heavy front doors, his expression resolute as he steps inside. Inside the grand foyer, he is met by 2 individuals who have been awaiting his arrival. An older man introduces himself as James, the butler, while a young woman with long, reddish-brown hair introduces herself as Arya, the head maid who will manage his daily needs. James observes that Vim has likely not eaten and offers to guide him to where a meal has been prepared. Vim, slightly taken aback but gracious, replies that the pleasure is all his and follows them. As he is led toward the dining room, he reflects on his new reality. He marvels that the day has come when he would live an upper-class life, a possibility he had never even allowed himself to dream of. He enters to find a lavish meal spread across the table. Overwhelmed, he asks if it is truly all right for him to eat it all. James confirms that it is, as everything was prepared specifically for him. He takes his first bite of the meal prepared for him. Looking at his new staff, he thanks them for the food and announces that he won't be holding back. The taste is a revelation. He exclaims that it's delicious, admitting to James that it's his first time ever eating such fine food. The butler smiles, pleased that he enjoys it. After the meal, while sipping tea, he remembers his original purpose. He was looking for a teammate. Hearing this, James offers to bring him a map. The butler then clarifies the options for finding a companion, asking if he intends to visit a guild or perhaps a slave merchant. The latter suggestion catches Vim off guard. He quietly considers the word slaves. Seeing his contemplation, James explains that if he does wish to go to the slave merchant, he has an acquaintance he could introduce him to. The concept of slavery in this land is a regulated one. A slave is a person whose life and human rights have been bought and sold, whether for money or due to life struggles. Legal slave traders cannot operate without government approval and must guarantee the lives of their slaves. Despite these regulations, Vim is aware of the darker side of the trade. He knows that kidnappings occur and that illegal organizations and black market traders operate in the shadows. He states aloud that while he won't act selfishly, it is an option to consider. His thoughts conjure images of the brutality of such illegal groups, men being beaten and women silenced and captured against their will. The thought of this injustice seems to solidify his resolve. He wonders if he should go, realizing that visiting a merchant might provide clues about the very organization he opposes. He makes his decision. Turning to James, he agrees, stating that he will stop by the slave merchant after visiting the guild. The butler acknowledges the plan and agrees to contact his acquaintance. His first stop, however, was not the slave merchant, but the Adventurers Guild. As he concluded his business there, he offered his thanks. Moments earlier, he had arrived at the guild master's office, apologizing for coming without an appointment. He thanked the man for the greeting, explaining that he should have been the one to visit. The guild master, a man named Hamlet, flipped through some papers. He informed Vim that unfortunately, there were no S-rank missions available at the moment, but promised to contact him if anything interesting came up. Vim nodded in understanding, thanking him for his time. Hamlet then presented him with his official guild ID. He accepted the card, which identified him as Vim Ael, S-rank adventurer and magician of the abyss. Hamlet advised him not to lose it, as it also served for identification in emergencies. Stepping out of the office, Vim considered his next move, concluding that the slave trader was likely the better choice for finding a suitable companion. His thoughts were interrupted as he became the center of attention in the guild hall. The other adventurers buzzed with excitement, recognizing him as the newly appointed S-rank. Whispers spread that he must be Arc-sama's disciple, which made his high rank understandable. The sudden focus left Vim blushing and flustered. Overwhelmed by the unwanted attention, he found the situation deeply embarrassing and made a hasty exit from the guild hall. Having fled the guild, he finally arrived at the location James had told him about, the servant agency. He stood before the building, wondering aloud if he would truly be able to find a suitable teammate in such a place. A stout man leads Vim Ael toward a door labeled Beast Room. He suggests that if Vim is looking for an adventuring companion, a beastkin with excellent combat power would be a fine choice. Vim remains silent, his expression unreadable. Inside, a beastkin with feline features, pointed ears and a long tail, smiles slyly. She is one of many, a line of cat girls, all presented for inspection. Vim considers them thoughtfully, his hand on his chin. He concludes internally that he isn't looking for mere sex appeal. He needs something different. He turns back to the trader, whose face is contorted in a sales pitch, and asks if there are any more available. The man hesitates, admitting that there is, but he doesn't recommend it. Unfazed, Vim insists on being shown. Reluctantly, the trader leads him down a separate corridor, explaining that their business operates with government permission and that it's almost like charity work. He continues to elaborate as they walk, stating that they even accept cursed slaves who often arrive with injuries and incurable diseases. The person he is about to introduce is in such a situation. The trader stops before a closed door, announcing their arrival. Vim looks on, his expression hardening with anticipation and concern. As the door opens, the sight within gives Vim pause. On the floor of the bare room is another cat girl, dirty and bruised, who glares up at them with fierce, defiant eyes. Looking at the defiant girl, Vim Ael is struck by a sudden memory. A vision of a smiling young girl, Anna, flashes through his mind, and he murmurs her name in surprise. The cat girl, unaware of his thoughts, glares back at him, her face a mask of pain and fury as she trembles with exertion. The slave trader breaks the tense silence, explaining that she has been infected with a strong poison. Vim Ael, still processing the resemblance, tries to reassure her, stating that he isn't a bad person and that she simply reminds him of a childhood friend. He continues his explanation, adding grimly that because of the poison, she doesn't have much longer to live. Despite the dire warning, Vim Ael looks at the silent, dirt-smudged cat girl and makes a swift decision. He informs the trader, "I'll take her." The trader, taken aback, questions his choice, asking if he's sure he wants her even in this state. Vim Ael's resolve is firm. He confirms his decision with a simple yes, adding with confidence that he will neutralize the poison. With the decision made, the trader presents the paperwork. He instructs Vim to sign, and Vim confirms the details before putting pen to paper, signing his name, Vim Ael. Once the document is signed, the trader announces that it's time to move on to the contract ceremony. An assistant grabs the cat girl, preparing to move her. She struggles violently against the assistant's grip, a guttural growl escaping her lips. The man shouts at her to calm down and stop resisting. Seeing her distress, Vim Ael steps forward and gently places a hand on her head, startling her into stillness. He reassures her not to worry, promising she will start to feel better now. He then begins an incantation, calling upon the spirit of light to grant the girl the blessing of purification. As he completes the incantation, a glowing magical sigil materializes on the floor beneath the cat girl. She looks down in confusion, then winces as the light envelopes her. The light surges around her, and she stumbles back, wondering aloud what this strange phenomenon is. Observing from his desk, the stout slave traitor expresses his disbelief, asking if she was truly healed. His assistant stands beside Vim, who calmly confirms that she was. The cat girl, her complexion clear and healthy once more, turns toward Vim. She clutches her hands to her chest and offers a quiet, hesitant word of thanks before turning away. He responds with a warm smile, telling her she is welcome. He declares that from now on, they will work together as companions. His declaration leaves her wide-eyed and speechless, the word companion echoing in her mind with disbelief. He then instructs her to inform him immediately if she notices anything strange with her condition. She looks up at him and agrees. To confirm her status for himself, he reaches out and invokes a skill, appraisal. The skill reveals her status to him. He sees the lingering effects of the poison dragon's curse and understands now. The realization of how painful it must have been for her hits him with force. But as his eyes scan further down the appraisal results, a far more shocking detail comes into focus. Her class is listed as Princess of a Fallen Country. He processed the stunning revelation from his appraisal skill. A Princess of a Fallen Country. So that was her true class. The cat girl stood before him, her expression neutral, as he grappled with this new truth. Outside the servant agency, Vim Ael informs the cat girl that the poison dragon's curse has been successfully purified. He asks gently if she is already feeling better. She looks up at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and hope, and confirms that she is. Relieved, he smiles and tells her that's good. His quiet satisfaction is interrupted by the slave trader and his assistant, who celebrate loudly. The assistant exclaims that Vim truly cured her, just as one would expect from an S-rank adventurer, startling Vim with the outburst. He waves his hands dismissively, a bit flustered, insisting that he only did what was natural. The cat girl watches him, remaining silent. His humble words do little to calm her racing thoughts. She clutches the collar at her neck, thinking that he is a kind person who treats her with a normality she has never known. But this kindness fuels her suspicion. She believes all who buy slaves are terrible people and fears that she will be treated badly again. A memory of a bruised and terrified face flashes in her mind as she wonders if he is lying. Her mind plunges back 10 years, to the fall of the country of the Beastkin. As a child, she huddled with other young survivors while a woman with a heart-shaped mark over her, I told them to surrender. With the adults gone, the woman sneered that brats like them would sell for a high price. From that day forward, her life was a series of hardships. She recalls being told she was no longer useful, being thrown away, and finally being inflicted with the poison. Returning to the present, she cannot believe that something so good and convenient could happen to her for free. As the slave trader asks Vim if it's truly okay to trust him, the cat girl looks at her own hand. The pain is gone. She had no idea he was such an amazing magician. As she grapples with her conflicting thoughts, the slave trader turns to Vim with a new proposition. He asks if Vim would be willing to treat the other children as well. He considers the slave trader's request, a confident smile spreading across his face as he asks if they are certain they don't mind him helping. He then beams, declaring that of course he doesn't mind. After all, he proclaims, he is the magician of justice. The cat girl looks on, her expression a mixture of surprise and confusion. His confident demeanor falters slightly as he realizes he has yet to introduce himself. The cat girl watches him, her ears twitching and her hands clasped nervously before her. He extends his hand toward her in a formal gesture of introduction, startling her. Her eyes widen as she stares at his outstretched palm. Looking her in the eye, he introduces himself as Vim Ael and says it is nice to meet her. She remains silent, her expression still one of apprehension. He adds with a gentle smile that they are companions now. The girl lowers her gaze, her mind racing. She still knows nothing about him. Despite her deep-seated mistrust, she senses that his words are genuine. She can feel that they come from his heart. He isn't lying. A powerful desire to believe him, to trust that his kindness is real, wells up inside her. Her hand slowly reaches out to meet his. She places her hand in his, a small, hopeful smile finally gracing her lips. She introduces herself as Hannah Sharon and formally places herself in his care. As they shake hands, Hannah reflects on the feeling. She doesn't know if it's merely a product of her desperate circumstances, but the warmth from his hand is undeniably pleasant. She watched as the stout slave trader gestured towards a large, intricate magic circle inscribed on the floor. He announced it was time to begin the contract ceremony, instructing her to step inside. As she and Vim Ael stood within the circle's bounds, a complex, glowing pattern materialized on the back of her neck, catching Vim's attention. The trader then approached him, presenting a small, sharp blade on a tray. He explained the next step. Vim was to place a few drops of his own blood onto the newly formed pattern. Vim calmly agreed. He took the blade and knelt behind Hannah, who had lowered herself to the floor within the circle. He gently reached towards a mark on her neck. As his blood touched the pattern, it flared with a brilliant white light, sealing the contract. The light subsided, and Vim rose to his feet, a satisfied smile on his face. He praised Hannah for her cooperation. The trader confirmed that the ceremony was complete, and Vim added that he should be informed if anything else was required. His attention then turned back to Hannah. He looked at her gently and suggested they head home. Her face, once filled with suspicion and hardship, broke into a radiant, joyful smile as she eagerly agreed. A grand, multi-story mansion stands under a partly cloudy sky, its many windows reflecting the daylight. A lone figure is visible on the roof, overseeing the estate. At its entrance, Vim Ael arrives with the cat girl by his side. The head maid, Arya, greets him warmly, welcoming Mr. Vim home. He announces his return. He then turns his attention to the cat girl, who looks around with a nervous expression. Vim thanks his butler, James, for introducing him to the slave merchant and asks if this girl is to be his new companion. He expresses his gratitude. He formally introduces her to his staff, stating her name is Hannah Sharon. He then requests that James prepare a room for her. The butler, with a knowing look, confirms that he most certainly can. With the arrangements made, Arya steps forward and offers to show Miss Hannah around the mansion. Vim watches them, a faint smile on his face, as Hannah looks on uncertainly. As she begins to lead the way, Vim places a reassuring hand on Hannah's shoulder. He tells her it's all right and encourages her to go ahead. She takes a breath, her tense expression softening slightly as she quietly agrees and follows the maid down the hall. Sometime later, Vim relaxes in a sitting room, engrossed in a book. Arya approaches him quietly, getting his attention by addressing him as Mr. Vim. The scene shifts to a lavishly decorated room where Hannah stands in awe. Vim asks for her opinion of the room, and she turns to him, her eyes sparkling. She exclaims that it's wonderful and that she couldn't be happier. He gestures toward the sofa, inviting her to have a seat. He informs her that from now on, this is her place. With a quiet but firm yes, she moves to sit down. He began to explain the arrangement, stating that he wanted her to help with his work. The main task, he clarified, would be fighting monsters, and so he needed to know what weapon she was skilled with. She responded with confidence, declaring that she was proficient with a one-handed sword. Pleased, he replied that was great, and that he would leave the vanguard position to her. He then suggested they go shopping for a weapon right away. Hannah, sitting on the edge of a couch, added that they would also need to buy some clothes. He agreed, beginning to list out the next steps. He continued, explaining that since they would be working together from now on, it was only proper that they be on equal footing. Hannah was taken aback by this, her eyes widening as she asked if it was truly okay for him to do so much for her. She fell silent, overwhelmed by his generosity. Stammering, she managed to express her profound gratitude. At that moment, James and Arya burst into the room, with the butler enthusiastically offering to show them a place where they could go shopping. On the upper floor landing, Hannah eagerly accepted his offer. Sometime later, in what appeared to be a weapon shop, Hannah held a new one-handed sword, examining it with a puzzled expression as Vim looked on. After acquiring her weapon, Vim also provided her with a full set of adventuring gear. Now dressed in a light top, dark shorts, and a long, dark coat, she looked ready for battle, though a quiet moment of reflection passed over her face. As they walked back towards the mansion, with him carrying her new equipment in a case, she apologized for making him carry everything. He simply told her not to worry about it. He glanced at her, explaining that this was simply what a man should do. Hannah looked up at him, her expression a mixture of surprise and contemplation. He listens as Hannah, a blush on her cheeks, admits that this is the first time she has ever been treated with such kindness. She continues, her eyes closed in contentment, explaining how good it feels to be valued. Without him, she reflects, she would have died from the poison, having known nothing but a cold and unforgiving world. Her heartfelt confession leaves him momentarily speechless, a faint sweat on his brow as he simply utters her name. In response, she turns with a decisive step, her voice trailing off as she begins to explain her reasoning. She pivots back to face him, a radiant smile on her face, and declares that she is truly thankful that he found her. Her gratitude catches him by surprise, but his expression softens into a gentle smile. He thinks to himself that he is the one who should be thankful, realizing what a fortunate meeting it was. Later, as day turns to evening, he sits alone at a table on a balcony of the grand residence. He gazes up at the star-filled night sky, his thoughts turning to Anna. He quietly wonders if he can truly become a magician of justice. His contemplation is interrupted by the arrival of James, who formally asks for a moment of his time. Surprised, Vim turns to acknowledge him. The butler presents a letter sealed with a royal crest, announcing that it has arrived from His Majesty the King. Vim accepts it with a word of thanks, his expression turning serious. He held the letter, his eyes scanning the elegant script. The message was a direct summons from the king, stating a need for his advice on an urgent matter and requesting his presence at the royal palace the following day. His expression hardened with contemplation. A matter requiring his advice? He couldn't fathom what the king could possibly need from him. Within the Cyrus Empire, a commander reports to his emperor. He confirms that Vim Ael has traveled to the Leora kingdom and has already become an S-rank adventurer. The emperor presses a hand to his forehead, sweating. He finds the news unbelievable, especially considering how recently Vim had escaped the dungeon. His commander observes the reaction, addressing him as Duke and asking what he plans to do. The emperor's eyes are wide with concern. He reflects on his past actions, recalling that he had imprisoned Vim precisely because he was a threat. Now, the situation has devolved into a worst-case scenario, with the looming possibility of war against Leora. After a moment of contemplation, he makes a decision. He instructs his commander to hold their position and report back as soon as any new information becomes available. Left alone with his thoughts, he wonders what he should do. Elsewhere, Vim Ael comes to a sudden, chilling realization. He now understands how he escaped. The dungeon was left unattended, with no guards assigned and no maintenance performed on the barrier. The escape had been far too easy. Back in the Cyrus throne room, the commander watches his emperor with a knowing smirk. He internally wonders what Vim Ael's next move will be. That evening, at the royal palace in Leora, Vim and Hannah are brought before the king. He apologizes for the sudden summons and gestures for them to sit. He introduces himself as Eldoret Leoria and addresses the cat girl directly, saying he's heard of her and identifying her as Hannah Sharon. Hannah appears startled and nervous by the direct address. The king smiles kindly, telling her not to be so stiff. He explains that he heard she was a gifted person and that he had been looking forward to meeting her. Flustered, Hannah manages to thank him for his kind words. He acted without consideration for one's status, a trait Vim Ael found fitting for the king of a meritocratic nation. Vim realized his majesty surely knew of Hannah's origins. The king decided not to prolong the pleasantries, leaning forward to state the reason he had summoned them. He had a request for Vim. He explained that the Third Night Order was currently in the East Forest, facing an unusually difficult time, suppressing a surge of monsters. Because of this, he wished to send Vim there as support. Vim was taken aback, questioning how monsters could pose such a challenge to the elite Night Order. The king confirmed the gravity of the situation, adding that the surrounding areas had also sustained damage. His Majesty then posed the question directly, asking if Vim would go. The young man exchanged a glance with Hannah. After a moment of consideration, he answered with a fur yes. Steeling himself, Vim Ael formally accepted the request. Pleased with the response, the king thanked him and slid a finely crafted card across the table. He took the card, examining it with a puzzled expression as he asked what it was. The king explained its purpose with a confident smile. The card served as a testimony that the royal family had his back, allowing him to bypass any inspections or troublesome procedures within the country. He encouraged Vim to act freely. In addition to that, he revealed another plan. He was considering a way for Miss Hannah to register as an adventurer. The suggestion left both Vim and Hannah completely stunned. He acknowledges Hannah's point that government regulations do indeed prohibit slaves from registering as adventurers. However, with a firm expression, the king declares that he personally opposes such rules. His voice continues over a view of the capital city, explaining the political landscape. While there are people calling for the abolition of slavery, arguing that individuals should be judged on their performance, a great many conservatives currently stand in the way of such change. Because of this political deadlock, he intends to deem Hannah's registration a special case. He hopes to use this opportunity to steer public opinion towards a consensus on abolition. For this to be possible, he states, they need to recognize what true power is. Hannah listens, stunned by the weight of his plan. With a confident smile, he looks directly at them and formally asks them to complete this mission without fail. In perfect unison, Vim and Hannah shout their acceptance, their faces alight with determination. Sometime later, a horse-drawn carriage makes its way along a forested road, carrying them away from the royal capital. Inside, Hannah turns to Vim with a bright, cheerful expression. She remarks that the king is a good person for making it possible for someone like her to have a chance at becoming an adventurer. He agrees enthusiastically, then adds with a knowing smile that perhaps, someday, the king would even abolish slavery entirely. His thoughts, however, take a darker turn. He doesn't believe that using even criminal slaves like Hannah to make money is necessary. He recalls Anna, thinking that if they didn't have such a system in place, she probably wouldn't have been killed. Staring out the window, he continues his internal justification. With the system of slavery, no one would feel sorrow and things would improve. He sits in a carriage with Hannah, their journey underway. The driver informs them that it will take half a day to reach Burlon, the town nearest the East Forest, and suggests they rest. Vim acknowledges the information with thanks. As they travel, a sense of unease prompts him to scan the area for potential threats, just to be safe. His eyes widen in shock at what he discovers. Outside, a young blonde woman stands her ground, sword in hand, against a menacing black dragon and a swarm of smaller winged beasts. Seeing the commotion outside the carriage, Vim Ael pushes past his companions, his expression set with determination. He declares that he is going to help, rushing towards the sounds of battle. Outside, the blonde heroine stands alone, her sword drawn as she faces a menacing group of winged, black dragons that have descended upon her. She grits her teeth in frustration, muttering a curse at the creatures. With a fierce battle cry, she lunges forward to meet the charge of the nearest dragon. Her blade flashes in a wide, clean arc, slicing cleanly through the monster's shadowy form. The victory is short-lived, as another dragon slams into her from the side. She cries out as she is thrown to the ground, her sword knocked from her hand, while smaller, bat-like creatures swarm above. Lying helpless, she squeezes her eyes shut in despair, thinking it can't end like this after coming so far. The victorious dragon looms over her, its maw open for the final blow. Just as the creature lunges, Vim Ael sprints between them, shouting the name of his spell, Severance Barrier. A shield of hexagonal light erupts from his outstretched hand, deflecting the attack. He glances back at the stunned warrior, a look of relief on his face. He tells her it's great that he made it in time. Covered in dirt and sweat, she looks up at her rescuer, asking who he is. His attention, however, is already elsewhere. He looks past the blonde heroine and urgently calls out a name. Hannah. Cool, mate. Responding to his summons, Hannah Sharon lands nimbly on the battlefield. She immediately ducks under the sweeping tail of one dragon as another descends upon her from the sky. With the dragons closing in, Vim Ael invokes the spirit of fire, calling out to Hannah as he unleashes a volley of fire bullets. The projectiles streak through the air, striking several of the beasts and engulfing them in a searing explosion. Responding to his magical assault, Hannah Sharon leaps into the fray. With focused intensity, she cuts down the remaining black dragons in a flurry of precise and powerful strikes. As the last dragon falls, the blonde knight they rescued watches them, sweat beading on her brow. She recognizes their strategy, noting their excellent coordination. The magician limits the enemy's vision while the knight moves in for the kill. Vim Ael then turns his attention to the knight's injuries, placing a hand near her cheek and casting a healing spell. A soft light envelopes her face as the wound vanishes. She touches her now unblemished skin, amazed by the restoration magic. Hannah Sharon observes nearby, as Vim humbly insists it was the least he could do. Now fully recovered, the knight formally introduces herself as Misa Flamen, a member of the Imperial Guards of Cyrus. She expresses her deep gratitude for their help, stating she wishes to repay them. Vim is taken aback, realizing he has just saved a knight from the Empire. He considers her offer, thinking to himself that while getting too involved is a bad idea, a day will inevitably come when the Empire must intervene. He acknowledges the great pride that is inherent to a knight's profession. Turning back to Misa, he introduces himself as Vim Ael. He tells her that while he appreciates the offer, simply having her indebted to him will suffice for now. He continues with a friendly smile, clarifying that he is fine at the moment. However, he proposes that should he ever find himself in a pinch in the future, he would like to borrow her strength. Misa quietly considers his words, murmuring his name. After a moment, she looks toward him and formally accepts his proposal. She looked at him with conviction, making a solemn vow. Whenever he found himself in trouble, she promised to wield her sword in his name. He accepted her pledge, his voice carrying back through the trees as he departed. I'll be relying on you, Misa. With that, he was gone. She stood alone for a moment, realizing he had already departed. The name echoed in her mind, Vim Ael. She was certain she had heard the Duke mention that name before. Her thought trailed off as she watched his distant figure rise into the air, wreathed in magical power. A look of awe crossed her face. It seemed she now owed a favor to someone truly incredible. Their destination was the guild branch in Burlon, the closest town to the volatile East Forest. Inside, Vim Ael approached the front desk with Hannah Sharon, stating he was there on the king's orders to see the guildmaster. The receptionist, glancing at his S-rank adventurer card, confirmed their identities and, noting they were expected, offered to take them there at once. She led them to an office where a man with light hair and glasses greeted them. He introduced himself as Camilla, the master of the Burlon Guild branch, and after thanking them for coming, invited them to sit. He finished laying out the details, concluding his explanation of the current, dire situation within the East Forest. Vim considered the facts, his expression grim. He summarized his understanding. The night order was being pushed back, the monsters were not subsiding, and high-ranking beasts were reappearing constantly. Camilla confirmed this was correct. Camilla added that the problem was compounded by many new, inexperienced adventurers, making the situation uncontrollable. Having grasped the full extent of the crisis, Vim agreed to do his best to help. With their objective set, they ventured into the East Forest. As they moved through the trees, Vim urged Hannah to stay alert. He sensed an overwhelming concentration of mana, realizing with alarm that it was 5 times the usual level. He questioned what could possibly be its source. The answer appeared before them. A monstrous, reptilian beast overwhelming a group of adventurers. The situation was terrible. He rushed to their side, shielding them and asking if they were all right. As a stunned adventurer looked up, Vim's gaze locked onto the massive creature, identifying it as the source of the dense mana. He arrives to find the adventurers in a desperate struggle against a massive reptilian beast. One of the warriors, seeing the newcomers, shouts a warning for them to run, emphasizing the danger. Without hesitation, he turns to his companion. I'll leave it to you, Hannah, he declares. She responds with a determined, on it, and leaps into the fray, a blur of motion against the roaring monster. Her attack sends her recoiling through the air, but he moves in an instant to catch her. Holding her securely, he asks with concern if she is all right. She stammers a quick thank you, caught off guard by the rescue. Still holding her, he begins an incantation, his eyes glowing with focus. The great spirit of fire, I request of you. As he speaks, a complex magical sigil materializes and glows intensely above his hand. The spell culminates in a massive explosion, engulfing the beast's upper body in a torrent of destructive energy. Hannah watches, a grunt of exertion and surprise escaping her lips. As the smoke begins to clear, Vim's expression is cold and focused. He states that since Hannah created an opening, they will show no mercy. With the battle concluded, one of the rescued knights approaches, asking what they are doing there. Vim simply states that it's now over. Before addressing the knight further, he turns his attention to the wounded. Raising his hand, he invokes another power. Spirit of light, I request of you, area heal. A wave of restorative light emanates from him, washing over the injured soldiers. The effect is immediate and astonishing. The lead knight marvels that his injuries are completely healed. He introduces himself as the vice leader of the Third Knight Order and expresses his profound gratitude. He asks if they were sent by the king, prompting Vim to give his name. The vice leader realizes the immense mana he sensed was from the monster, not Vim, and feels a wave of relief. His relief, however, is short-lived as another concern comes to mind. He looks toward Vim and Hannah, hesitating slightly before making another request, asking if it's not too much trouble. At a grand banquet, members of the Bowling Guild and the Third Knight Order celebrate their joint success in a monster subjugation mission in the East Forest. Amid the festivities, an older nobleman approaches Vim Ael, commending his truly commendable performance. Vim humbly accepts the praise. The man introduces himself as Count Dion Bolin, the local lord, apologizing for his delayed greeting and inviting Vim to enjoy the banquet to his heart's content, an offer Vim happily accepts. Later, Guildmaster Camilla remarks to Vim that completing the request so quickly was rather astonishing. Vim deflects the praise, stating that it wasn't just their work, but the effort of everyone involved. This sentiment is shared among the other adventurers, who toast to their kingdom. They celebrate that Leora is headed in the right direction, a place where hardworking people are rewarded for their efforts and outstanding talents can gather because they are treated fairly. It is because of this philosophy that the people of Leora are so lively, making it a truly wonderful country. This stands in stark contrast to the nation of Cyrus, which is known to dispose of any powerful individuals. After the celebration, Vim and Hannah share and travel by carriage through the night. She remarks on how fun the banquet was, and he agrees, adding that the food was quite good. His cheerful mood fades as he gazes out the window. An unsettling silence hangs in the air, making him wonder if it's a little too quiet. He silently hopes for a safe journey home. He then feels a strange sensation wash over the area. It feels devoid of life, almost as if they have entered some kind of clearing barrier. His suspicion is immediately confirmed by a violent jolt. Both he and Hannah are startled as one of the carriage's large wooden wheels shatters and flies off its axle. The carriage grinds to a halt. As Vim and Hannah peer into the darkness asking what happened, the flustered driver inside can only stammer, caught completely by surprise. He finds the road blocked by a party of 5 individuals. Their leader, a woman with glasses, seems surprised, noting that there should be a clearing barrier in place. The woman remarks on his knowledge with a smirk, but he is unimpressed. He tells her that unfortunately for them, he knows that mental magic can be nullified with skills and bluntly orders them to get out of the way. She apologizes, stating that what he's asking is impossible. With a sinister grin, she explains that they cannot allow anyone who has seen them to go free. Her group prepares to attack on her command. Without a moment's hesitation or discussion, he begins an incantation, calling upon the spirit of light as a golden glow emanates from his hand. Hannah looks on, surprised by his sudden action. A powerful thunderbolt strikes from the sky, shocking the enemy leader with its power despite the short chant. He shouts for Hannah to handle 2 of the attackers, and she immediately springs into action, drawing her blades to intercept them. She moves with blinding speed, striking down one of the men with a decisive blow. Seeing this, the leader grits her teeth, remarking that Vim is just a magician before deciding to intervene herself. As another attacker cries out in pain, Vim closes the distance on a third, a blade flashing in his hand as he moves in for a strike. He clashes with the leader, who blocks his attack. He informs her that she is terribly mistaken if she thinks a magician can't handle close-quarters combat. Cursing her misjudgment, she clutches a small, round object in her hand. The woman throws the object to the ground, instantly engulfing the area in a thick cloud of smoke. Vim immediately recognizes it as a smoke bomb. When the smoke begins to part, Hannah reports that the leader has run away and that even detection magic can't locate her. She asks if they should pursue, but Vim declines, instead preparing to cast a wind blast to clear the air. He dismissed the thought of the escaped attacker, confident that the town guards would eventually apprehend them as he and Hannah made their way from the forest. As their carriage rattled along, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, wondering what a group like that was doing so deep in the woods. His expression hardened with resolve. The identity and motive of those assailants were a puzzle he would need to solve upon his return. Upon their arrival, they were greeted warmly. Before anything else, Vim asked if any matters had arisen during their absence. They were met by the king of Leora and a hooded figure. The king questioned if Vim knew the attackers, noting they didn't seem local and speculating they could be lackeys from Cyrus. The hooded individual then added that a man and woman with red hair had come to visit. The mention of red hair triggered a sudden realization for Vim. Deep within the Cyrus Empire lies an underground prison. Inside one of the cells, a commander in a crisp uniform approaches 2 figures. He orders them to get up, informing them that they have work to do. The male prisoner, Kajiro, looks up with a menacing grin that reveals sharp, pointed teeth. He casually asks who the target is this time. Beside him, the young woman, Maria, remains silent, her expression unreadable. They are the Cyrus Empire's designated hitmen. The commander presents a photograph, identifying the target as Vim Ael, a former Imperial court magician now residing in the neighboring country of Leoria. Kajiro remarks that it should be fine to take him out. He then turns to Maria, noting it's been a while since they could go out, and tells her focus on the task. Her hands tremble slightly as she quietly agrees. Meanwhile, at his residence in Leoria, Vim Ael is blissfully unaware of the plot against him. He relaxes in a vast, opulent bathroom, letting out a long sigh of relief, remarking to himself on its unnecessary spaciousness. He closes his eyes, reflecting on how intense things have been. On his first mission in Leora, he saved a Cyrus knight by cooperating with Hannah, and then encountered a mysterious group of people on the way home. His thoughts drift to the suspicious people that James had mentioned, a flicker of concern crossing his face as he wonders if there's a connection. He then recalls old rumors from his time as a court magician. It was said that the Imperial prince, who is now the current emperor, utilized hired assassins. The memory becomes sharper, more vivid. Those very assassins murdering the man who was at the time the emperor. The chilling implication settles in his mind. Could he now be a target of assassination? But he questions the logic. Why would they come all the way to their target's home? His train of thought is shattered by the sound of the door sliding open. Thinking it might be James, he turns, only to be stunned into silence. It's Hannah, wrapped in a towel. With a slight blush, she asks, "May I join you?" The cat girl, wrapped in a towel, steps forward, insisting that she wash his back as part of her duty as a slave. He immediately objects, flustered, reminding her that he has told her they are equals and she has no such obligations. She seems to accept his point, but her confusion remains. With a blush, she asks if men don't typically enjoy such attention. She presses on with her logic, pointing out that since they are on equal footing and practically naked together, then it should be fine. He cuts her off with a panicked shout, forbidding her from continuing. He realizes that her entering the bath at all is part of this misunderstanding. His voice echoes from the bathroom as he tells her she can use it after he is finished. Moments later, he emerges from the bathroom, dressed and refreshed, remarking to himself how pleasant the bath was. He lets out a long sigh and collapses onto his bed, finally able to relax. Just as he settles in, a knock sounds at his door. He sits up, his mind immediately going to Hannah, resolving that he must speak with her about her behavior. He calls for the person to enter, but it is not Hannah. Arya, the head maid, stands in the doorway, asking for permission to intrude. He grants it, asking what she needs. He was met with a kind offer from Arya, the head maid. Noting that he looked tired upon his return, she suggested a massage to help him relax. He accepted without hesitation, moving to sit on the edge of his bed. Arya instructed him to lie face down, and he readily agreed. As her hands began to work on his back, she asked about the pressure. A sigh of contentment escaped him. The massage felt wonderful, easing the tension from his muscles. But even as the physical tension eased, his mind turned to other matters. He began to speak about the events that transpired during his absence, feeling he should be the one thanking her. Arya, however, perceived his underlying stress, remarking that he seemed tense and that everyone was simply grateful for his hard work. Inside a royal chamber, King Eldoret Leora reviews an extermination report, commending Vim Ael for his work hunting monsters in the eastern forest and reminding him to collect his reward from a guild. The conversation then shifts as Guildmaster Hamlet mentions hearing that Vim encountered suspicious people. Vim confirms this, speculating that they might belong to a human trafficking organization. The king gravely notes that kidnappings and abductions have recently become a serious, increasing problem in the country, one they have been unable to solve. Vim reasons that if even the state cannot get to the bottom of it, the culprits must be a very large organization. He then reveals to the king that, in the past, he had investigated a certain human trafficking group. His mind flashes back 3 years to his time as a court magician. He recalls cornering the traffickers, vowing revenge for Anna. But as he prepared to strike, the female trafficker smirked while her accomplice ignited a bundle of explosives. The sudden, massive explosion caught Vim completely by surprise. The memory of the aftermath reveals the traffickers dead amidst the rubble, a clear sign they were willing to kill their own to escape. Returning to the present, Vim explains to the king's council that he was close to catching them, but the large organization slipped away. He declares with conviction that human trafficking can never be allowed, regardless of whether this is the same group he once pursued. King Leora, looking weary, concedes that Vim seems to know more about the matter. He decides to entrust the investigation to him, asking to be informed of any findings. Vim accepts the responsibility. Just as their discussion concludes, the door clatters open and Princess Ellen Leoria enters with a bright smile. She greets Vim warmly, saying it's been a long time and insisting he call her by the familiar name Aaron Chan. Vim appears momentarily stunned by her casual request. Her familiar tone causes a reaction. Misa Flamen points out that using Chan is an order from the princess, while Hannah Sharon mutters that it isn't fair. Ellen seems to have lost some sort of bet to Hannah. The topic quickly changes to food, as the group reminisces about a delicious meatball pasta dish from a specialty restaurant they all enjoy. Ellen wistfully says that someday she would love to eat the dish at the actual restaurant, not just have a version made for her. She turns to Vim and asks if he would take her there someday. He looks at her as she beams, telling him how much she enjoyed hearing his story. She asks him to please tell her more again in the future. After the door closes behind Vim and the others, the king's expression turns grave. He addresses his daughter, apologizing that he cannot let her go out freely. He reminds her that the outside world is still full of dangers. Ellen's smile fades as she listens, understanding her father's words. She looks toward the future with a hopeful smile, expressing her desire to see the day when Vim and the others finally bring peace to the world. Her father, King Leora, seated across from her, agrees with a gentle expression, stating that he too looks forward to that day. Meanwhile, in a grand castle hallway, Vim Ael and Hannah Sharon are stopped by a young man in a military uniform. He introduces himself as Vice Captain Mark, greeting both Vim and Hannah warmly as he takes Vim's hand. His attention then shifts entirely to Hannah. He compliments her, telling her she looks lovely, which causes her to blush and stammer a thank you. Mark clears his throat, offering a quick apology for his forwardness. He turns back to Vim, acknowledging his return to the castle. Vim confirms that he has just gotten in. The vice captain then asks if Vim could spare a moment. Vim readily agrees, inquiring about the matter at hand. Mark leads them into an office, announcing that he has brought Vim and his partner. A man with light-colored hair inside the room turns to greet them, thanking Vim for coming. The man gets straight to the point, introducing himself as Camille, the captain of the Third Night Order. He explains that because of Vim's great work in the Eastern Forest, they would like to request his help in hunting a swarm of slimes. He continues with a troubled expression, clarifying that the next mission site is experiencing a massive slime outbreak. This type of enemy, he admits, is a poor match for the Night Squads, who rely primarily on sword-based combat. Camille adds that the head mage has also sent a request for backup to the court magicians, but they are currently unavailable. Vim listens intently, his hand to his chin as he considers the situation. The difficulty lies in the nature of magic itself. To use it, one must control the mana within their body and develop the skills to form and cast spells, a process that takes immense effort and time. This is why there are so few magic users, and why monster hunting is mostly handled by knights. However, when facing something like a horde of slimes, it is only natural for the knights to feel uneasy about their combat strength without the head mage present. He gladly agreed to help, accepting Captain Camille's offer. The captain expressed his gratitude, promising to contact Vim as soon as the mission schedule was finalized. Upon returning to his residence, he was greeted by Hannah and James. He informed the butler that he had been tasked to accompany the knights and would be away again. Before James could fully process this, Vim added that he had something to ask him. He asked James if he knew anything about the human trafficking organization. The butler admitted he didn't know much, but mentioned that since he used to serve in the royal palace, he had a decent network of information. Vim requested that he investigate the matter. That night, in the Burlon region of the Leora kingdom, the silence was broken by the sound of a blade piercing flesh, followed by a spray of blood against a building wall. An assassin, Kajiro, smirked over his latest victim, a young blonde girl. Finding a wallet full of money on her, he declared it a lucky find. His partner, Maria, watched silently from behind. She questioned his actions, reminding him that their target was supposed to be Vim. Kajiro casually dismissed her, stating that taking out this girl was just for his own amusement. When Maria warned that finding the body would put Vim on guard, she called him cold. He scoffed, confident he wouldn't make such a rookie mistake. He reminded her of their status. They were just slaves, and if they were found out, they would simply be returned to their cells. He then turned the tables, asking if she had anything she wanted to do. The question triggered a memory. Maria recalled a time when she was a young girl, walking hand in hand with her parents. Her mother had asked her what she wanted to be when she grew up. In the memory, her younger self smiled brightly, joyfully declaring that she wanted to be a florist because she loved flowers. Back in the grim present, Maria looked away. She admitted that she did have desires, but conceded that it was a totally different story now. Kajiro simply smirked. Her thoughts are shattered by Kajiro's words. He reveals that the cat girl they've been observing, Hannah Sharon, apparently came from the same organization as their own master. The revelation strikes Maria with the force of a physical blow, her eyes widening in shock as the silhouette of their lady boss, the woman with the heart-shaped mark, flashes in her memory. He presses on, asking how she could possibly know about Hannah's life. Maria, her eyes now covered by a blindfold, explains that their master told her. Kajiro's voice drips with envy as he describes Hannah eating fancy meals at a mansion and sleeping on a soft bed, a stark contrast to their own blood-soaked existence. They have to commit crimes just to survive. He gazes at the distant, smiling cat girl, remarking on how happy she looks despite being just like them, and cries out to the gods about the profound unfairness of their fates. She attempts to brush off his words, claiming it's not her problem and that she doesn't care. However, her hardened expression reveals the truth. She glares ahead, admitting to herself that Kajiro is right. Her gloved hand tightens into a fist, the leather straining as a single, bitter question echoes in her mind. Why is it only them who must suffer this way? 1 week later, on the day of the slime subjugation mission, a man named Carmel cheerfully greets Vim Ael in the street. Vim, accompanied by Hannah, appears less than thrilled by the early morning encounter. Carmel apologizes, asking if he kept Vim waiting, but Vim assures him that he is right on time. They stand before a formation of armored soldiers, ready for the mission. A woman then approaches, introducing herself as Erin, the acting chief court magician, and states she will be in Vim's care for the day. As they shake hands, Vim senses an immense power from her, comparable to an S-rank adventurer. With all key members present, he announces that it is time to depart. Inside a carriage, Carmel outlines the plan. Their first step is to travel to the town of Radia, which will serve as their base. They will form joint units of 5, mixing knights and magicians. While the knights clear out surrounding magic beasts, the magicians will focus on the slimes. Carmel declares that his own unit will lead the charge, consisting of himself, Vim, Aaron, and Hannah. Vim asks if the magic beasts are scarce because of the mass slime outbreak. Carmel confirms this, but adds that they don't know the cause, as the numbers are suddenly dropping. Vim speculates that the balance of mana in the air may have been altered by human development, suggesting this crisis might be a result of their own actions. Carmel listens, considering the possibility. Upon arriving in the commercial town of Radia, Carmel gives Vim and Hannah leave to explore until the subjugation preparations are complete. In the bustling market, Hannah is amazed by the sheer number of stalls. Noticing some delicious-looking food, Vim eagerly grabs her hand and suggests they eat. Hannah happily eats a meat skewer, remarking on how good it is. As Vim wonders where they should go next, his attention is abruptly caught by a commotion in a nearby alley. A young girl is being cornered by a group of men. The thugs loom over the terrified girl, telling her to come play with them. One demands to know who dares to interfere, just as a powerful punch sends him flying backward. Vim stands before the downed thug, his hand crackling with magical energy as a warning to the others. He then turns to the girl, helping her up and asking if she is okay. He suggests they go to the guild for safety. The girl, still shaken, thanks him. Vim reflects that her fear is completely understandable. He takes her hand gently, telling her it's dangerous and they should leave. To reassure her, he presents a card, swearing on it that he will protect her. The girl's eyes widen in shock as she recognizes the insignia on the card. It is the crest of the royal family. She sits quietly on a bench inside the Radia Guild branch, flanked by Vim, Abel, and Hannah Sharon. An official announces the beginning of protection procedures, asking them to have a seat and wait. As they wait, Vim turns his attention to a guild staff member overseeing a group of children. He inquires if there has been any word from the orphanage, but she confirms there hasn't been. The young girl he rescued clutches his hand, her expression bright with gratitude as she thanks both him and Hannah, telling them she feels safe now. The staff member addresses him formally as Lord Vim and asks if something is the matter. He doesn't respond directly, his gaze distant as he processes the situation, sensing that there is some kind of trouble afoot. His concern is directed at the group of children gathered nearby. It becomes clear that the orphanage has refused to accept them, leaving the guild to provide temporary shelter for the time being. Connecting the pieces, he realizes the problem must originate at the orphanage itself. A look of resolve settles on his face. An investigation is necessary. A few hours later, the focus shifts to the dense Radia forest. Carmel stands before a contingent of knights and adventurers, announcing the official start of the slime subjugation mission and urging everyone to unite their strength. Among the assembled force are Vim, Hannah, and Aaron. The group responds to the command with a unified shout, their objective clear: to defeat the magic beasts without taking a single step back and to advance together. As they venture into the forest, he turns to Hannah, instructing her not to overexert herself and to leave the slimes to him. Acknowledging how many times she has saved him, he declares that this time, he will be the one to protect her, gently patting her head. She looks up, apologizing for not being of more help. Her apology is met with his warm gesture, and though slightly flustered, she offers her heartfelt thanks. Unseen by the pair, Carmel observes their interaction from short distance, a faint, amused smile on his face. He then looks ahead, his expression confident and determined. He calls out to his partner, entrusting the other magic beast to him. Vim states his conviction plainly. Those who have the power to do something should do it, and he feels he has done enough waiting. He and his party venture into the Radia forest, where they are immediately beset by magic beasts. A horde of slimes and bandaged mummies emerges from the trees. Carmel and Hannah take the vanguard, shouting for the others to leave the clearing to them as Hannah swiftly cuts down a bat-like creature. As they handle the smaller threats, a massive slime lunges forward, its gaping maw dripping with ooze. From the front line, Carmel and Hannah shout back to their companions, telling them they are counting on their support. In response, Aaron begins her incantation, a complex magic circle glowing at the head of her staff as she calls upon the spirits of fire to heed her wish. Vim, standing beside her, confirms that the spell is ready. She unleashes a torrent of fire, incinerating the monsters before her. Aaron is momentarily stunned by the incredible firepower she has just wielded, a distraction that allows a towering mummy to close in from her flank, its arm raised to strike. Before the creature can land its blow, Vim raises his own hand. A magic circle flares to life as he casts Flame Gatling Gun, a rapid volley of fireballs that obliterates the mummy. Aaron turns, shocked, realizing he's just saved her life. He looks at the shaken magician and tells her this is no time to be stunned, urging her to move on to the next one. She quietly acknowledges his command. After the last of the monsters fall, the party regroups. Carmel praises Vim's splendid performance, noting he doesn't even look tired. Vim explains that he only used about 20% of his mana. As the others process this, Aaron suddenly bows deeply before him, offering a profuse apology. She continues her apology, her voice filled with shame. She confesses that she was so completely entranced by his magic that she became distracted, lamenting that she is unfit to be acting as the chief magician. Vim listens to her quietly. He tells her it's all right, explaining that he's just glad she wasn't hurt. He reassures her, stating that she's acting as chief magician because she is capable and therefore has every right to hold her head high. His words bring a bright, relieved smile to Erin's face, and she thanks him sincerely. With the matter settled, Vim's focus returns to the mission. He asks her to use detection magic to check for any more magic beasts in the area. The party stands ready. His expression suddenly turns grave, catching Hannah's attention. She asks what's wrong, just as Erin's detection spell flashes a dire warning. The magical map indicates a significant threat, and Erin confirms she is sensing a large-class magic beast nearby, urging them to gather the other units. Carmel immediately declares he will go with Vim. Acknowledging Erin's report, Vim agrees, and she prepares to use a communication spell. The source of the warning quickly becomes apparent. Before the group, a truly gigantic slime emerges from the foreshadows. Its gelatinous body is immense, featuring a cavernous mouth lined with sharp teeth and several unsettling eyes staring out from its dark mass. The sheer scale of the creature leaves them momentarily stunned. Before the party, a monstrous creature blocks their path. A gigantic slime, its gelatinous body towering over them, a wide maw of sharp teeth gaping open. Vim Ael assesses the situation, deducing that this creature is the likely cause of the slime outbreak, having absorbed a tremendous amount of mana. Carmel suggests they wait for reinforcements, but Erin Magician points out that the creature is already using its mana to multiply. She expresses doubt that even the combined might of the court magicians could handle a beast of this size. Vim quietly agrees with her grim assessment. He concludes that while it is dangerous, they have only one option. Vim announces his intention to defeat the creature himself using Imperial-class magic. Carmel is stunned, recognizing the spell as powerful enough to wipe an entire town from existence. Vim, however, believes it is their only chance. His declaration sends Erin into a panic. She shouts that using such magic without any preparation is too dangerous. It will turn him into a demon. Confused by the warning, Hannah Sharon asks what she means by demon. Erin explains the terrible fate of those whose mana runs wild from using too much magic. They lose their sense of self and become destructive beings that harm people, much like magic beasts or natural disasters. Vim listens, his expression pained but resolute. He knows the risks all too well, but his decision is made. He turns his gaze back to the looming monster, acknowledging that if he doesn't take this risk, they have no hope of defeating it. His resolve prompts Hannah to speak, her voice filled with concern. She asks if he will be all right, her unspoken fear for him hanging in the air. Vim softly says her name in response. He offers her a gentle, reassuring smile. He reminds her that he has faced danger before and emerged fine, promising that he will be fine this time as well. He recalled Misa Flamon's parting words, her expression a mixture of concern and unwavering faith. She had told him it would be okay, that she believed he would be all right. With that memory strengthening his resolve, he turned to his companions, ordering them to stay back so they wouldn't get caught in the blast. Carmel acknowledged the command. He then strode forward, positioning himself alone before the towering, gelatinous mass of a gigantic slime, its cavernous maw and multiple eyes fixed upon it. Raising his hand, he began to gather the immense magical energy required for the spell. He closed his eyes and issued his plea to the spirits of flame. In response, a blindingly bright point of light ignited in his open palm. He thrust the condensed energy forward, unleashing it toward the monster. From behind, Hannah cried out his name in alarm. Erin quickly took charge, telling the others she would handle this part and shouting for a barrier to be deployed. She planted her feet firmly on the ground, grunting with the effort of manifesting the powerful defensive magic. As a magical shield formed around them, she urged everyone to hang on. With a determined look, Hannah affirmed that she would. The slime let out a furious roar as the attack neared. The sheer force of the spell's backlash caused the barrier to crack and splinter. Erin strained, admitting she couldn't hold it any longer, as Hannah watched in horror. Suddenly, a tall, cloaked figure appeared behind the group. Announcing that they had made it in time, the stranger reinforced the failing barrier with their own magic. As the battle against the slime raged, reinforcements finally arrived. Vice Captain Mark, leading a contingent of court magicians, announced their presence and apologized for their late arrival. Vim Ael, however, paid them no mind, his concentration absolute. He continued his incantation, calling upon an immortal vow and the crimson power that burns all to ash, willing the energy to gather in his hands. He declared his path as one of conquest, summoning a peerless, gleaming light that coalesced into a blinding point of energy in his palm. The gigantic slime below could only stare, its many eyes reflecting a flicker of confusion at the immense power gathering before it. With a final, thunderous cry, he unleashed the spell's name. Inferno. A cataclysmic torrent of fire erupted, engulfing the landscape. From a safe distance, the cloaked figure watched the devastation unfold. Below, Carmel, Hannah, and Erin stared in utter disbelief, recognizing the awesome might of Imperial-class magic. As the flames died down, Vim stood calmly, reflecting that the spell was but a fraction of his true power. He conjured a magical display that searched the area, confirming the absence of any remaining magic beasts. Carmel approached, noting that their subjugation mission was now complete. Erin praised him, stating that being able to use Imperial-class magic without preparation was a decisive victory. Vim explained that he avoids the risk of turning into a demon whenever possible, reserving such power for true emergencies. With the battle won, Carmel suggested they head back to the Radia and before nightfall, and the group set off. Walking beside him, Hannah's gratitude overflowed. She thanked him sincerely, telling him he did his best and calling him amazing. She added that his ability to use such magic gives everyone courage. Her expression then turned serious as she confessed the truth. She admitted that when she heard he might turn into a demon, she was struck with the terrifying thought that someone so kind might disappear from her life. Wiping a tear from her eye, she looked at him, her voice thick with emotion. She was so worried, she explained, but now that he was right there, safe and sound, she was just so glad. Her confession hangs in the air as she quietly adds that she feels the same. Vim Ael looks at her, slightly taken aback, murmuring her name in surprise. He tells her that she also worked hard. Then his thoughts drift to all the people who have supported him. He reflects that it's because everyone helped him and believed in him that he is still here now. The faces of Aaron, Carmel, Hannah, Misa, Ellen, and the children he's met flash through his mind. A warm, genuine smile spreads across his face as he concludes his thought with a simple, heartfelt expression of gratitude for them all. In response, Hannah's face lights up with a brilliant, joyful smile of her own as she happily accepts his thanks. Watching her, Vim reflects on how full of life she looks now, a stark contrast to the pain she was in when they first met. His thoughts turn to Anna, and he acknowledges that there are still so many people in the world living without smiles. He silently reaffirms his desire to make flowers of happiness bloom for every single one of them. The next day, Vim and Hannah arrive back at their residence. James and Arya are there to greet them. As Vim announces his return, Arya steps forward, apologizing for the timing. She delivers an urgent message from a king. His Majesty has personally requested an audience with Lord Vim and has specifically asked that he bring Lady Hannah with him to the royal palace. The news leaves both of them utterly stunned.